well, I can compose, I can narrate, I can storytell, all this. It doesn't help me if I want to do comics, or if I want to do a children's book, or if I want to do gallery work. There's a different language for all these areas, and you will. I think that's what I see. The biggest mistake is that people think if you show some kind of talent, then you can work anywhere. Whereas your portfolio will show you where you will work. If you wanted, does that make sense?
Yeah.
For you guys, yeah. Sorry, I'll just keep one thought, and I can talk all night. Sorry, so I'll try. If you have more questions, try to wave me off or something, or raise your hand or something like that.
Speaking of that, have you had a situation where you were looking to kind of shift gears and maybe get a job that you haven't really done before, and maybe you had to teach yourself, like how you said, if you wanted to break into comics, you'd have to do some panel work before you did it. Have you had a situation where you had to kind of teach yourself a different part of the industry and then show that to people and be like, look, I can do this too?
I tried a little bit. To be honest, the majority of my career has been in book covers, narrative storytelling. I'd say 90% of what I've done is book cover illustrator. So I've branched out from there, but as I'm trying to break into the fine art market, I'm having to generate entirely new portfolio images for that. So in some way I have to do that. I have to create a larger body of work in order to prove myself that here's a new visual language that I can embrace, that I can master, and then people might be willing to take a chance on me. So I haven't tried to be honest, I've never done a 180 change, going off and trying to do comics or something that's really different, because it's too difficult. I'd have to make too many samples. I'd have to spend months at a time, downtime, to make all those new samples. And I just don't have the time. I can't. I have a certain lifestyle that I have to keep up with. Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're changing or learning to try to break into that different market?
Oh, boy, it's it's similar in business sensibilities than the fine art world is very similar, but I think what's important, bless you, I think what I'm finding is that what's more important is having a very homogenized body of work. So it's even more important to have a unified visual language than it was in illustration. So that's the biggest change I think I've come to realize, is that I've got to even put more focus and narrowing of focus on what I love to do, which is difficult because I love science fiction, I love fantasy, I love narrative realism, I love classical realism, I love mythologies, I love astronauts. So that works great in illustration, but it doesn't work great in the fine art world.
Sorry.
It's okay.
A pop-up.
Got stuff flashing on the screen. There you go.
So how you are you guys all illustration students, or is it a mix?
It's actually a mix in here of illustration and fine art.
Oh, okay. How many fine artists are there? A couple.
Fine artists?
Or yeah. Actually, because I didn't study illustration at Syracuse. I was a fine artist at Syracuse. I was one of these guys these artists that walked between both worlds of doing the fine art and illustration. And to be honest, it's greatly benefited my career. Being able to see both ways of deconstruction and self-analyzing what you do, and then learning technical issues and business, promoting myself and being more business savvy in illustration. So
when you were first starting out, when you graduated from fine art and then started getting illustration jobs, was there anything that really surprised you that maybe you were prepared for and didn't happen, or you weren't prepared for just because of the difference in major?
Oh, that? No, I think what surprised me was I was making money doing what I love to do. It's like, wow, someone's paying me money, and I could like sit at home and paint all day. But to be honest, I never look. I think my realization came in my last year at Syracuse was that my competition wasn't my peers like you guys in the classroom. It was all the professionals at the Society of Illustrators. It was the professionals in the galleries down in Soho. That was the market that I had to compete against. And so that was like a bummer. Like, that was like, wow, like, okay. So if I want to do a book cover illustrate, if I want to do comics, then I have to steal the jobs away from Jim Burns and George Perez or Bill Sienkiewicz or Al Williamson, and like, wow, that's pretty hard. How do you do that? Or if you want to work in the galleries, you got to go up against Richard Estes or Vincent Desiderio, who's a figurative painter. Like, wow, so. I think that was a big awareness, but luckily that hit me my senior year, and so I just really kicked my ass in gear my senior year to work to bring everything that I did up to a really high standard of professionalism. And so that's how many of you guys are seniors anyway? Most of you.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've got the clock is ticking, huh? You guys?
Yeah, I know. I don't know why we're wasting time talking to you. We should be working.
Yeah, I know. You should be working. I was working on the comics. I was working on paintings every night. Yeah. Okay, we're done. Okay, get back to work.
Does anybody else that hasn't talked have a question?
Yeah, you guys. Yeah, any other questions back there about business or anything?
Yeah, we got a.
I had a question. Keep rolling.
I have a question. I have a question about your technique. How much reference do you take for each one of your paintings? I mean, have you ever done a painting where you haven't used any reference? It's all from your head, or I mean, how much reference do you use?
Yeah, it varies. Usually, if I don't use any reference, you'll never see that painting on my website. I am a reference hound, I call it. I seek it out, and it's not so much that it's a crutch as much as I love the detail and the sensibility and the ideas I get from looking for the reference. And so if you guys know John Waterhouse, the J.W. Waterhouse, the 19th century romantic painter. He's a fairly hyper. He's a realist. I was going to say hyper-realist, but he's not quite hyper-real. But his best paintings are those that incorporate a fairly high degree of referencing. In his mid-career, if you look at his body of work in a book, or there was an exhibition that they just had up at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, and they had an entire retrospective of all of his major works in his career, or most of them. And what was fascinating was seeing the way, in the beginning of his career, he was using a lot of reference, but he was idealizing a lot of information, like making things more perfect, not really observing more naturalistic poses or expressions or movement. And then in his mid-career, in his 40s, late 30s, and into his mid-40s and 50s, he worked very, very heavily from nature. There's a tremendous amount of naturalism. And then later in the career, he went back to idealizing and kind of throwing away the reference and more working, obviously, out of his imagination. And the beginning and end are weak. And the middle is his most brilliant work. When you think of the Lady of Shalott painting, or the Magic Circle, or the boy, those are the incredible paintings from Waterhouse, and those are from the period when he was, if he had to paint a lily pad, he would go out and probably look and find a lily pad or find a photograph of it and observe it. Or if he's painting reeds, he would go out and get reeds and bring them into the studio.